Okay, good afternoon to all. Today's my sharing is titled "God is Always at Work," and so I will continue because I have 4 stories, God stories lah, to share, to see, just to experience that God is always at work even in our lives. Okay, the first story is about. All these are true stories. The first story is about John. Okay, John, because of he got influenced by friends, and so at the early age of about 15, he started smoking cigarettes lah. So, and then from there he graduated and got into drinks. And so he got deeper, and he went into, when the friends also introduced him to marijuana, and from marijuana he went into hard drugs lah. And so that, he began to get deeper and deeper into it, and there was no way of coming out of it lah. And so this drug life led him into theft and all that, and finally he was caught and went into prison. And so when he came out of prison, he told to himself that I want to stop because I want to try to stop drugs on my own. But the moment he came out of prison, he only lasted for 1 day. The next day, he got, because he had no one to help him, to guide him, so he went back to drugs again. And this carried on. A few times he went into prison, he came out, went into prison and came out. And each time he promised himself in prison that he will stop. But the moment he came out, he got back into the old cycle again. And the final breakthrough came when he got a sentence of 3 years. And this was in somewhere mid-80s. And when he got 3 years for theft, he was held. At the time he was in Pudu, prison was in Pudu. They haven't moved to Kajang yet. So at that time, the prison was very crowded. In fact, the cell that was meant for 3, they kept about 13 or 14 prisoners in one cell. So you can just imagine how life will be when 14 or 15 people are crammed into a cell that is meant only for 3. And they were packed like sardines, and he was in that condition for 1 month. That is because he was in remand waiting for his sentence. 1 month he had to suffer. It's like hell on earth. And so this experience really shook him up. And so when he was sentenced to 3 years in prison, he was transferred to Kajang prison. But that experience in that cell was very frightening, or it's a very traumatic experience. So when he was transferred to Kajang prison, he was given a better cell, and then he managed to get hold of a Gideon's Bible. Those days, the Gideon's Bible was a small, it's a pocket Bible. And to get a Bible in the prison was almost impossible, but he managed to get one. So coming from a Catholic family, he had not read the Bible in his life. So in the cell, when he got the Bible, he started to read. And he came to this section in Psalms 34. Psalms 34, I'm reading from the Message version. Psalms 34 says, verse 4, God met me more than halfway. He freed me from my anxious fears. Look at him, give him your warmest smile. Never hide your feelings from him. I repeat, Never hide your feelings from him. When I was desperate, I called out, and God got me out of a tight spot. God's angel sets up a circle of protection around us while we pray. So as he read these Psalms, something began to work in his life. But this is a real life testimony. And so he promised himself that he will, this time, he will surrender his life to God. So when he came out of prison, there was a staff from the halfway home under Malaysian care. He was waiting for John when he came out of prison. And he took him. See how God answered his prayer? An angel appeared in the form of the staff, and he brought him to a halfway house. And John was able to stay there for about 3 months. So after 3 months, John thought that he was okay. And so he said he didn't want, because the staff advised him to go for 2 years rehab, 2 years full rehabilitation. But then John thought 3 months okay, he wants to go out. Again, he went out and there was nothing for him. The family rejected him because he was a Catholic before. The family is not all Catholic. So since he read the Bible in the prison, and when he went to a halfway house, he was also baptized by an AOG pastor in the halfway house. And so he began to realize that all his Catholic ways there are so many wrong things they are doing. So when he went back home after his 3 months, the family didn't accept him because he didn't want to follow the family prayers, didn't want to do all the things that the Catholic did. And then the father told him, okay, if you want to stay in my house, you either follow us, or you get out. So this John, he was quite desperate, and he called up the staff again from the halfway house. He said, I need help. So the staff took him and put him into a full rehab, 2 years rehab. See, 2 years rehab is meant to change a person wholeheartedly. It's kind of what do you call that? Complete change in him, because his body, his mind, and his soul need to be renewed, to rehabilitated. So during this 2 years program, he realized why he fell, because the body was okay, he was physically okay, but the mind and the soul and the spirit was still haven't been tackled. So that was what he learned during these 2 years in the rehab center. So after that, after the 2 years program, he was able to stay on and become a staff in that halfway in the drug center, and he was able to. He wanted to also help others who were also going through the same problem. So that is John's story. So the second story is coming. We want to share about a guy by the name of Sam. Sam was sentenced to life imprisonment because of he was for firearms. He was caught for firearms, and he was sentenced to natural life. Natural life means you die in prison. But during this time, through the work of Malaysian care and all that, he was able to hear the gospel and receive the Lord in the prison. And after receiving the Lord, because he knows that he's going to die in prison, so he began to share the gospel with the other prisoners, and he was able to convert, or maybe the Lord converted other prisoners through his sharing and through his lifestyle. And he was also able to, he shared that he also baptized a few of the prisoners in the prison with sprinkling. And so he made 3 attempts to get a pardon from the pardons board. Sure, you're allowed a prisoner, a life sentence, or a lifer is allowed 3 attempts to get a pardon. The first attempt failed, the second attempt failed. The third attempt, you were able to get, one of the executives of the Star newspapers, and he was able to publicize Sam's story in the newspapers, and through our efforts. But then I can see, you just see that God is at work in his life. So the third attempt, by pardon, he was able to get it. So all in all, he served about 28 years in prison. And he's still, after his release, he's now doing God's work. He's, helping out in a halfway house. And so, see, God is at work. God has a purpose for him to be in prison. So the same as John. The third story is about Mervyn. Mervyn was caught because of drug trafficking, and he was sentenced to death row. He was sentenced to the gallows. And so all this while, because Malaysian care is also allowed to go to death row and also to the normal prison. And Pastor Poa had a very significant, effort while Pastor Poa was allowed to visit the gallows and also was able to share the gospel with both Mervyn and also Sam. So after 5.5 years, you see, those in death row are allowed free legal service from the Legal Aid Bureau. So a new lawyer was able to take up Mervyn's case, and he found some loopholes in his section. And after 5.5 years, miraculously, God saved Mervyn and he came out of prison. And now he is working and serving the Lord. He's working in a children's home, and so he's very grateful for the work that Malaysian Care, God himself, who has at work in his life, and so he was just recently baptized, and so he is very grateful for all the work that Malaysian Care and also Pastor Poa, and in the end, it's God who was working in his life. And the last story is about this lady who is infected with HIV. Her name is, I don't bring out the real name, but her name is Lakshmi. Lakshmi, she comes from a Hindu family, and when she married a drug addict. So she was, the husband was infected with HIV. I think because of his sharing of infected needle, or either, I don't know whether he got infected through that or through sex. So, and then he infected Lakshmi. That was about 13 years ago. So when the husband was infected, the wife, she didn't tell the wife. And some or other, the wife was infected, but she didn't know. She didn't know that she was positive. So when she was pregnant, normally when the lady is pregnant, they do blood tests and all that. So through the pregnancy, they found out that she's HIV positive. At the time, she didn't know what it was, and so doctor advised her to go take medication and all that. So she was on medication. But then because of the side effects, the medication really causes, because there's 2 or 3, they call it a cocktail. Cocktail means there are 2 or 3 medications which a positive person will take. But then the medication causes side effects like mood change, when you have loss of appetite, you lose weight, but you really cannot work because you feel very tired. And she was working. So all these side effects she couldn't take, and then she stopped. So when you stop the medication, the virus began to multiply, and then the old medication will never work. It won't work. So going back to the daughter, thank God that when the daughter was born through cesarean, they checked with the daughter, but she was negative at birth. But the doctor advised her when she is 12 years old, go for another check, because that is what the procedure is. After 12 years, the virus might come back. But thank God, after 12, when she was 12 or when almost 13 years old, the daughter was negative lah. Because that time the relation care was already took up the case. So that is the daughter's story lah. Thank God she's negative. So coming back to the Lakshmi, so she stopped taking medication, and then she fell sick, and she was taken to hospital. And the doctor who had following up, the doctor who was taking up her case asked her, why did you stop the medicine? So she said, I couldn't take the side effect, that's why I stopped. And she stopped for 6 months. When the doctor said, okay, after 6 months, the old medication is not going to work because the virus has become immune to the medication. So she had to go for the second liner. Second liner is you have to pay for it. So she couldn't afford to pay because cost of different medicine cost different prices. So she couldn't afford to pay. That's where she approached Malaysian Care. She came to drop-in center to ask for help to pay for to help to buy the medication. That's when I took up the case. But I came into the picture because one of our staff, her name is Carol, she was visiting all these ladies who were positive, and she called me to go with her because she couldn't drive. At the time, she couldn't drive, so I just escort her, drive her around. That's how I came to know all the ladies who are infected. Most of the ladies are infected. In fact, all are single ladies, single mothers. So that's the story of Lakshmi. After she began to take the new medication, and then now I'm following up with her. And so this is what I do in my work. So second, the thing is why I do it, why I want to do it. I feel that these ladies are infected. They are innocent victims. And so, they don't deserve to be in that condition. So I have, through compassion for them, after Carol retired from Malaysian Care, I just continue to do the work because this time I was alone. So I just continue to visit them. But sometimes I also bring some of the lady staff to help me doing counseling with this patient. So I want to just say that it is not easy going because going to Sungai Buloh Hospital is 1 day's work. By the time you take them there, because of transport, it's difficult for them to find public transport to go and then go to Sungai Buloh and come back. So I come in to provide transport for them. In the meantime, I also was able to share God's love. God really cares for them. All of them are open to the gospel. But the thing is, the follow-up is where I need prayers. Follow-up is because these people, my cases, they stay all over Rawang and Sri Kembangan, also in Semenye. So I continue to seek for God's help because it's better for a lady to go minister to a lady. So that's where sometimes I will just bring along somebody. So even my wife, once a while, she comes along to help to speak to these people. Okay, so this is all my sharing for today.